primary versus secondary research, detailed comparison, with examples related to plant extraction. Learning outcomes. Understand the fundamental differences between primary and secondary research. Recognize the various aspects of research methodologies and their applications. Identify specific examples of plant extraction in both primary and secondary research contexts. Evaluate the advantages and limitations of each type of research. Apply knowledge of primary and secondary research to real-world situations. Contents, definition, purpose, data collection method, data type, data specificity, research control, accuracy, time requirement, cost, research tools, flexibility, data interpretation, depth of study, reliability, examples of data, bias control, scope, replicability, use case, conclusion. Definition. Primary research involves gathering new, original data directly through experiments, observations, or interviews. Example, extracting essential oils from peppermint leaves in a controlled experiment. Secondary research involves analyzing data or information that has already been published. For example, reviewing multiple studies on peppermint oil yields. Purpose. Primary research is conducted to generate new insights, test hypotheses, or solve unexplored problems. For example, finding the optimal temperature for extracting peppermint oil. Secondary research helps understand existing knowledge, provide background, or identify gaps. For example, reviewing literature on various extraction methods. Data collection method. Primary research uses methods like lab experiments, direct observation, surveys, or interviews. Example, comparing different solvents for oil extraction from plants. Secondary research data is collected from books, articles, academic journals, or databases. Example, summarizing research results from various studies on plant oil extraction. Data type. Primary research data is raw and collected firsthand by researchers. Example, measuring essential oil yield directly in an experiment. Secondary research uses processed data. Example, using previously published yield tables from different studies. Data specificity. Primary research is specific to the research question. Example, investigating the impact of drying time on lavender oil yield. Secondary research provides a broader view. Example, reviewing general best practices for lavender oil extraction. Research control. Researchers have full control over variables in primary research. Example, adjusting temperature during oil extraction to determine effects on yield. Secondary research relies on pre-existing data. Example, analyzing previously published temperature conditions without any control over the original parameters. Time requirement. Primary research can be time-intensive, involving experimentation and analysis. Example, testing extraction methods over several weeks. Secondary research is typically faster since the data is already available. Example, quickly gathering information on existing extraction methods. Accuracy. Primary research accuracy depends on careful execution of experiments. Example, accurate measurement of temperatures and plant weights directly affects outcomes. Secondary research accuracy depends on the quality of original studies. Example, summarizing well-documented experiments on plant extraction. Research tools. Primary research requires lab tools, including distillation apparatus and chromatographs. Example, using a distillation setup for oil extraction. Secondary research relies on databases, journals, and books. Example, gathering plant extraction data from published articles. Flexibility. Primary research allows modifications during data collection. Example, changing the solvent during an extraction experiment if results are not optimal. Secondary research is less flexible, relying on existing studies. Example, summarizing studies without the ability to modify experimental parameters. Data interpretation. Data interpretation in primary research is based on first-hand observations. Example, analyzing essential oil yield trends based on lab results. Secondary research interpretation is based on synthesizing others' findings. Example, reviewing multiple studies to determine the most effective extraction method. Cost. Primary research can be costly due to experimental needs. Example, the cost of solvents, equipment, and lab usage for plant extraction. Secondary research is generally more affordable. Example, reviewing existing literature using free or subscription-based resources. Depth of study. Primary research provides deep insights into specific variables. Example, studying the effect of pressure on peppermint oil yield. Secondary research provides a broad overview. Example, reviewing literature to understand general trends in plant extraction methods. Reliability. Reliability in primary research depends on experimental design and consistency. Example, repeating extraction experiments for similar yield. Reliability in secondary research depends on the original study's quality. Example, using peer-reviewed studies for accuracy. Examples of data. Primary research involves fresh data collected by the researcher. Example, yield, chemical composition, and parameters recorded during an experiment. Secondary research uses previously published data. Example, extracting values from a meta-analysis on plant extraction methods. Bias control. Bias can be controlled in primary research through blind or double-blind experiments. Example, preventing bias in selecting solvents for extraction. Secondary research may inherit bias from original authors. Example, skewed conclusions from studies that omitted negative results. Scope. Primary research has a narrow scope, focusing on specific research questions. Example, investigating a new solvent's effect on oil yield. Secondary research has a broad scope, summarizing multiple studies. Example, understanding various extraction methods used for different plants. Replicability. Primary research is replicable with well-documented procedures. Example, recording each step of the extraction process allows others to repeat it. Secondary research itself cannot be replicated, but similar literature reviews can be conducted. Example, reviewing the same set of articles to verify conclusions. Conclusion. Primary and secondary research both play crucial roles in advancing knowledge. Primary research provides new, original insights through direct experimentation and observations, while secondary research offers a broad understanding by analyzing and synthesizing existing data. Each type has its unique advantages, limitations, and applications depending on the research goal. Understanding these differences helps researchers choose the appropriate methodology for their specific research needs. Thank you for your time and attention.